The Ravens had a serious injection of talent this offseason to an already contending roster. I want to go over who and why that is so important. I also want to talk about if Derrick Henry can jump into the top 10 all-time rushers this year and how far can he go up that list throughout the rest of his career. All that and more in today's episode of the Flock Rundown.
Ravens Flock. The Flock Rundown is the place to be.
Motionless brainwaves attempt to swim their way to sense, can't tame the untamed.
What's up, Ravens fans? My name is Ryan, and welcome back to another episode of the Flock Rundown. We are almost 1 week away from watching our Ravens play Sunday night in Buffalo, the rematch. I cannot wait. At least we got some college football on today, so football is back overall, but NFL football starts next weekend, and I cannot wait to see our Ravens play, man. Seriously, I've been dying all offseason for some football again, especially how that Buffalo game ended, and we are starting in the same exact place. So full circle moment, and what a way to kick off the season. I can't wait for that. We're going to be talking about that matchup pretty much all week long, but today I wanted to dive into some different topics, and we'll start with Derrick Henry, who is on the cusp of getting into the top 10 all-time rushers. Right now he's 19th, which on a surface level might not sound like he's on the cusp of the top 10, but he's 1,316 yards away from passing Tony Dorsett and getting into the top 10 all-time rushers. Derrick Henry had over 1,900 rushing yards last year, so unless you think his production is going to drastically drop off, he's definitely going to jump into the top 10, in my opinion. He needs 1,316 yards to jump into that top 10. We know Derrick Henry's a solidified Hall of Famer as is, but I am curious to see how high he goes up on this rushing list. I definitely think he gets into the top 10 this year. This is not the slowdown year for Derrick Henry, in my opinion, and I don't know when that's coming. He's defied age odds already and taken very good care of his body and just a workhorse plus a genetic freak, just to have that size anyway is going to give you an advantage later in your career. Even if you lose a little bit of speed, Derrick Henry's still going to be very effective. But the way he works and takes care of his body, I just really think that he could have a couple more dominant years, but especially this year. I mean, he's coming off a 1,900-yard season. The Ravens just extended him, and they're paying him. He's making $16 million. So it's not like the Ravens aren't investing in Derrick Henry, which tells me they're going to use him. You don't invest in someone like that to not give him the ball. So I think this is another dominant year from Derrick Henry, very similar to last year. If he really, really gets the ball, who knows? He could even get that 2,000 yards and end up in an Adam Sandler movie. But either way, I think he's getting well over 1,300 yards, which puts him in the top 10. But I am curious to see how high Derrick Henry gets on this list at the end of his career. How many dominant years, how many years of football does he have left? Could he get to number one? I think that's pretty unlikely. So as we sit here today, he's 3,495 yards away from getting into the top 5. But he's 6,932 yards away from first place. I have no idea how many years Derrick Henry is going to play. I have no idea how many dominant years Derrick Henry is going to play. I am betting on this year and probably next year still being some pretty dominant years for Derrick Henry. I think he easily gets into the top 5 all-time rushers. First place to pass Emmitt Smith does seem unlikely. He would need basically 7,000 more career yards, and I think he would have to play for quite a while to get that. I mean, even if he averaged 2K a year, which is just not going to happen. I mean, maybe he could get 2K this year, but he's not going to stack 2,000-yard seasons. He would need 3 more 2,000-yard seasons, and he's still 1,000 yards away. So I think first probably unlikely, but I do think he definitely gets in the top 5. I think top 5 is a slam dunk. He's going to have another dominant year this year. I think that puts him in the top 10 all-time rushers, which is still an unbelievable accomplishment. I mean, look at the names that are on this list. This year alone, he's going to pass Steven Jackson, Fred Taylor, Franco Harris, Marcus Allen, Edgerrin James, Marshall Faulk, Jim Brown, Tony Dorsett. And then eventually I think he passes Eric Dickerson, Jerome Bettis, LaDainian Tomlinson, Curtis Martin, Adrian Peterson. And he could definitely pass a couple more guys and creep up higher. I think 1 is unlikely. Emmitt Smith is in a different category with yards. But other than that, man, I think the door's wide open for Derrick Henry to be in that top 5 for sure. And, cement a first ballot Hall of Fame career, which I think he already has. I don't think he needs to do that, but it is just impressive, and it's a healthy reminder of what a legend the Ravens have on their team right now. I mean, we got a prime quarterback. Lamar Jackson's entering his prime, in my opinion. We just saw him have his best season. I think that that's the start of it. I think we're about to enter a very, very dominant Lamar Jackson era. And, he's been dominant, but not quite like last year. And I don't think he's going to regress substantially. So I think we're about to see a strong prime from Lamar Jackson here, and to be paired with a legend like Derrick Henry, who's still doing it at the very back end of his prime, is just incredible, man. I mean, these are two all-time Hall of Fame players that we're watching, and it's just, I'm feeling blessed. I'm feeling blessed that they're both on our team, and the addition of Derrick Henry has been insane. And that leads me to the additions that the Ravens have made this season. And I really wanted to highlight this because the Ravens were a contender last year. They've been a contender the last 2 years, even with they didn't have Derrick Henry 2 years ago against the Chiefs. We are hosting an AFC championship game, in Baltimore, one game away from the Super Bowl. So that's without Derrick Henry. That's without all these additions I'm about to talk about. And then we add Derrick Henry last year, which was a substantial boost, in my opinion. And we're another Super Bowl contender again. And obviously we know what happened in Buffalo. We had a bunch of turnovers. Defense didn't create turnovers, just out of characteristic mistakes in the worst moment for the Ravens. The NFL season is finally here, and this year I've teamed up with DraftKings Sportsbook to bring you an incredible offer. If you're a new customer, you can bet just $5 and get $300 instantly in bonus bets. That's right, sign up, place a $5 wager, and DraftKings will give you $300 in bonus bets to use right away. Just make sure you sign up using my promo code TFR. DraftKings Sportsbook is for players 21 and older and available in most states. Please gamble responsibly, and when you do sign up, make sure you use code TFR to get your $300 in bonus bets. Let's talk about how much talent they've injected into this contending team just in this offseason through the draft and through free agency. We didn't lose a lot of key guys, and the guys that we did lose, we already replaced. We lost Brandon Stevens, we lost McCary, we lost Chris Board, Malik Harrison, Nelson Aguilar. We upgrade Nelson Aguilar to DeAndre Hopkins. We replace Brandon Stevens with Chidobe Awuzie and Jair Alexander. We lost veteran swing tackle Josh Jones. We replaced him with Joseph Noteboom. That's probably a wash. I think they even each other out, but regardless, we replaced the loss. Same with Chris Board and Malik Harrison. They were looking like a lot of depth linebacker and special teams loss. We go out and sign Jake Hummel to replace that special teams presence. We also keep Jay Higgins, an undrafted free agent who I'm very high on at inside linebacker. He's replacing those guys. And we drafted Teddy Buchanan, not counting a second year from Trenton Simpson, but I'm just talking about guys that we've injected in there. I think we've replaced Chris Board and Malik Harrison with Teddy Buchanan, Jay Higgins, and Jake Hummel. McCary's probably the one guy we didn't directly add anyone to replace his position, but Voorhees is going to get the start all year, and honestly, I like Voorhees better. I thought McCary just did not have enough strength and was really getting pushed around last year. Not that Voorhees is perfect, but I've liked what I've seen out of him. I think that he's definitely going to have some bad reps throughout the season. Everyone does. He's still growing as a player, and we know that the guards are probably the weakness, so that's, I think, the position that we really didn't add a lot of juice to, but other than that, we've replaced all of our losses and really upgraded the cornerback room. I was watching some games from last year, and Brandon Stevens was getting picked on a ton. And I know that, we watched that all season. It's easy to say, but I was reminded when I was watching some of these games from last year over throughout these last few weeks, and I'm like, man, opposing quarterbacks would literally look at who Brandon Stevens is on and throw that way, covered or not, because Brandon Stevens wasn't awful in coverage, but he couldn't make a play on the ball. And even in the playoff game, I was just watching the Bills game over again, and Brandon Stevens in the middle of the field's like stopping on a seam route by Shakir. He just stops in the middle of the field, and Josh Allen throws it right over his head. And it just feels like so many different times Brandon Stevens was getting picked on last year. And Brandon Stevens gave us some solid early years. I'm not trashing him as a player, but it just shows that we had a weakness last year and other teams would just exploit it. Well, we've upgraded from Brandon Stevens to Awuzie and Jair Alexander. It's massive, massive upgrades. And then you're getting year 2 of Nate Wiggins, who's obviously going to be a better player. But adding Jair Alexander and Awuzie to that cornerback room is absurd, man. And Keon Martin, I'll toss him in. I know he's at the back end. I don't think he's going to play a ton unless we have some injuries, but I just think that we've injected so much talent into this secondary. It has really changed the landscape of this Ravens team, especially on defense. This was a team that did have a few holes last year, and we had the number one defense for the second half of the season, but it wasn't without some weaknesses. People could still attack certain spots of the field, and I'm just not really seeing that this year. I know it's all on paper. I know the guys got to stay healthy, but they're healthy. They're going to be back to practice this week. Jair's coming back to practice this week. They're all playing week 1. There's no concern with that. So this talent is a massive upgrade. And now I want to move on to the draft. I haven't even talked about the draft. I think that this is maybe the most impactful draft right away. And I say that because we don't usually play a lot of our rookies in meaningful roles. And I really think there's 3 or 4 very meaningful rookies that are going to play a lot right away. Obviously, first round pick Malachi Starks is going to be our full-time starting free safety. We don't put rookies in those positions very often. Nate Wiggins was not in that position. He did not play a ton until later in the season. He wasn't a full-time player until the very end of the season. Nate Wiggins was not playing a ton early. Malachi Starks is going to play a ton. We need him right away. That is an impactful rookie. And look how much our safety play struggled last year. We had to put Kyle Hamilton where Malachi Starks is going to be playing deep, and we had Marcus Williams and Eddie Jackson there. So we've upgraded from that to Malachi Starks. And then in the second round, I think the steal of the draft, and a lot of people toss that word out lightly, and I've said it in jokingly a few times too, but Mike Green could be actually the steal of the draft in the second round. This is a top 15 talent player. I think he's the second or third best pass rusher in the entire draft, really just behind Abdul Carter. Mike Green is the real deal. And I don't know how much of a role week 1 he's going to have. Hopefully a lot. I think it's going to be hard to keep him off the field, but we do have a lot of other pass rushers that are still there, so he's going to have to earn some minutes there. But his playing time as the season goes is going to substantially increase from week 1. I think Mike Green's on the field a lot, man. It's just too hard to keep talent like that off. He's going to impact the game at a big level, man. We haven't had pass rush juice like that. Imagine getting to the quarterback that much faster, having a dominant pass rusher that teams really have to start focusing on and game planning for, paired with a way stronger secondary. That just leads to a lot more sacks, a lot more forced throws, which leads to a lot more turnovers. This defense is substantially better. And then there's the other rookies that were drafted later in the draft, like LeJontay Wester, who was instantly going to be our punt returner. That's a position of need. We haven't had juice or explosiveness at the punt return position. We haven't had a home run hitter that can just take one to the house. He already did it in the preseason game. He's done it multiple times in college. LeJontay Wester's that guy. That's a ton of juice to add to your team. A punt return touchdown or even a long punt return flips the field, changes momentum, keeps your offense fresh. It's just, there's so many advantages to taking a punt back. It changes the entire game, and we haven't really had that threat. We've had some stable guys that make the right decisions, but they haven't had that juice that LeJontay Wester has. So injecting that is basically adding another weapon to the Ravens team. I really think that that's a huge upgrade. And then Tyler Loop's going to play a pivotal role. I don't know if that's an upgrade. Obviously, we had Justin Tucker, so I'm going to say that's kind of a flat line. I know Tucker struggled last year, so maybe Loop has some struggles throughout the year at some point and kind of has an evened out year to what Tucker had last year. I don't think that that's a bad year by any means for his first year. I don't know if that's an upgrade at the kicking position, but we needed a kicker. We were going to have to move on from Tucker. Even if we kept Tucker, he suspended 10 games. So we needed a kicker. We were put in a circumstance where we needed a kicker, and we went out and got one. That's an injection of talent. And then, there's some depth guys in the draft that I think will play roles, like Teddy Buchanan, Aeneas Peebles. These guys are going to play roles, but probably not as meaningful as Malachi Starks, Mike Green, LeJontay Wester, Tyler Loop. These guys are playing pivotal roles for the Ravens right away. And I just think that the Ravens are substantially stronger than they were last year, which is really saying something, man, because the Ravens had everything they needed last year. That team was good enough. That was one of the best offenses of all time. And I know we didn't add this guy, but he's healthy now, and that's Keaton Mitchell. He's going to add some juice to the offense and the kick return game, so he's an addition to that contending team that we've had. I just really think the Ravens got a lot better this offseason, and there's absolutely no excuse to not go get the job done this year. So I really just wanted to come on here and break down in some detail where we've upgraded and how much better we've gotten since last year. And I know it's still on paper. Obviously, guys got to stay healthy. They got to go out there and get it done. But with these guys' track record, I'm not counting the rookies, but a lot of the free agents like Jair Alexander, DeAndre Hopkins, like these guys are upgrades if they stay healthy. That's the only question in my mind is health. It's not, ability or what they're going to contribute on the field. These guys are going to change the game. And I really think that the Ravens are in a much better spot than they were last year. And I just want to come on here and highlight that. But let me know what your guys' thoughts are. Appreciate you guys, as always, for tuning in to another episode of the Flock Rundown. Have a beautiful rest of your day. And I'll let the greatest linebacker in the history of the game take us out.
Ravens Flock. The Flock Rundown is the place to be. My man Ryan has been a lifelong Ravens fan since he was born. So I'm telling you now, it's about to go down. The podcast, the Flock Rundown. Ravens, baby. Nothing gets better than waking up and wondering how high we can fly. Tune in.